Hello and welcome to the Joyscape Therapy YouTube channel where we discuss everyday behaviors for everyday people. I'm your host, Marissa McKenzie. I'm a BCBA, and I also thought it's been a while since I've provided our listeners with an update on myself. I am the East Bay Regional Director with Joyscape, and I've been in the field for roughly 12 years now, but my roots are mainly in social services with youth in probation and in foster care. Across the years, my path has led me to ABA, and I'm so proud to be a part of this discipline and to be able to work with the population of children and families that we do. I'm also a part of our internal committee of research and education here at Joyscape, where we find speakers and create content for our staff internally. And our YouTube channel is a way for us to connect to our community and provide educational content on an external level. Our Journal Club Chronicles of CEs offer educational content for viewers to learn about ABA across several different settings. If you're interested in being a guest on one of our episodes, please reach out to us and we'll provide contact info in the show notes. As a reminder, we do offer one continued education unit as Joyscape Therapy is an ACE provider. Join us as we review details and findings from research, disseminate that research and how it applies to our everyday jobs and sometimes the broader range of life, making these concepts relatable, relevant, and educational. Please listen in until the end of the episode to obtain the 2 code words for today. Head over to our website and email if you enjoy today's episode at www.joyscapetherapy.com/CEUs. You'll enter the code words there and your BACB info at checkout, and you should receive your certificate in 5 to 7 business days. If you love our content, please follow us on social media, on Instagram and Facebook, where you can find fun activities to facilitate play with children, creating interactive teaching opportunities, and other relatable content. Getting into today's episode, we have our wonderful program director, BCBA, and my fellow colleague, Mary Sanchez. We'll be discussing ABA and fitness today, and I'm so excited to share this stage with Mary this afternoon. Mary, the floor is yours. Feel free to take it away.
Thank you, Marissa, for inviting me to talk about something that has become very meaningful to me, fitness, and of course, ABA, and how we can apply that to our overall wellness.
Yes.
So my name is Mary Sanchez, like Marissa said, and I'm a program director and BCBA here at Joyscape Therapy. And a little bit about myself, I've been working in the field of ABA since 2013, starting as an RBT, then pursuing my certification as a BCBA. My journey in ABA began with a deep passion for working with children and their families and helping them to overcome challenges in learning and their development. Over the years, I found immense fulfillment in applying the science of behavior analysis to support individuals in achieving their personal goals. So in addition to my work at Joyscape, I've always had a personal interest in fitness and maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Like many people, I'm sure, I've experienced ups and downs of trying to stay fit. And over the years, I've tried various short-term, successes followed by setbacks. Me growing up, I struggled with my own body image and was influenced by the beauty standards of the time, which led to a lot of confusion and unhealthy habits, especially as a young adult in college. So despite these challenges, I've always tried to be an active person. Throughout my life, I've engaged in a lot of physical activities, from running laps at the local track to playing softball, to swimming, to cheerleading, to dancing. I've always been on the move, whether it was participating in those sports or just taking a long walk with my dogs. Um, However, even with all this activity, maintaining a healthy balance has always been a journey. And so it wasn't until more recently, around 2020, 2021, that I began to seriously apply the principles of ABA to my own fitness journey and explore the different applications of ABA. So during the pandemic, we were inside a lot, and so I started taking more workshops and reading more articles about how I could apply ABA to my own life and specifically health. What else about me? And really, I've learned that like there really isn't a one size fit all. Like we all kind of have to decide what works for us. We have to listen to our bodies and then of course make those choices align with our values. So that's a little bit about myself and what I believe.
Yes. No, that's a wonderful intro. We're so excited to have you on and review some of the articles that we have to talk about today, ranging from how to increase physical activity through self-monitoring, goal setting, feedback, and analyzing factors contributing to binge eating, and also just other different tactics to utilize to really like I know for myself when we're talking about fitness, from especially like you mentioned, trying different forms of physical activity, even team sports, right? Like some of those things. And coming into adulthood, it really takes like a mindfulness, right? Like an
Yeah.
intentional focus and consistency. For me, consistency sometimes is like the hardest to maintain. So, just kind of diving into this, I think this content and this topic for today is going to be super relatable for our audience. But yeah, can you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about the workshop that you took, or even some of the previous ones in the past that have really resonated with you and helped guide you on your fitness journey?
Yeah. So the workshop I took was an online workshop. It was through it was through Central Reach and it was with I forget his first name, but I think it was Dr. Cameron, and it was behavior analysis and fitness. Um, and he really talked about kind of how to get started. And the big things he talked about were really using what we do in everyday life, like with our clients, right? You meet your client, you have an interview, you figure out what's the problem behavior, you do your assessment, and then you go from there and you try different interventions, find your reinforcers. And I think at the very end, which is something that really really sat in my heart, was there's going to be relapse and there's going to be days where you're just not going to do it. And you need to plan ahead for those days, just like we would with our clients, right? We know that there are maladaptive behaviors, we know what might happen. And so we plan for that ahead of time before that actually comes up. And it was an hour-long workshop, but those things I were things I never really heard before that we could really apply really apply what we do with our kids to our own life, right? Like evaluate our own maladaptive behaviors. What is the function of our behaviors? Why aren't we engaging in these more appropriate behaviors for our health? And it's not just fitness either. It can also be eating or how you eat or the type of foods that you're enjoying.
Yes, yes, no. And I think like one thing, just reading through the Normand article from 2008, where he kind of talks about increasing physical activity through kind of like a multi-component intervention, right? I think you mentioned self-monitoring, goal setting, and feedback in a combination. One thing that came to mind was like the genetic predisposition that some of us have. I know even for me, uh, learning that I had some like fatty liver tendencies, I guess you could call them, because it's not technically fatty liver disease. But even just then talking to my first cousin who I'm very close with, she also has high levels from that particular blood test. And, she'd had an ultrasound on her liver, and, diabetes runs in my family, as well as heart disease. So just some of those genetic predispositions that I think are really important for us to be aware of, and know that, like you said, one size doesn't fit all. So even though, I have some of like the diabetes, right, where it's just I'm pre genetic predisposition, sorry, has, makes me have to kind of just be a little bit more heightened about some of those risks that I'm just more susceptible to. So, just some of those things that I thought about, and some of the stats that came from was reviewing that article, was that 66% of adults are overweight and 33% obese. Of course, this is actually an older article, right? So from mainly
Yeah.
2008 or prior data. So, even with the pandemic and just knowing some of the stressors that came with that, and now even facing kind of the aftermath of the pandemic, and just a lot of things that were going on in the world, that can also, some of those outside factors like stress can contribute to are some of the maladaptive behaviors, right? Like, or even just falling off of our fitness journey, or, where we want to be in terms of our fitness and our physical activity.
Right. And hearing that in a professional setting, like in a workshop, was very validating because I also come from, a family with family history of heart disease or diabetes also. And then just within my own personal life, like watching my parents age and their health has really affected me. So seeing, professionals in our field tell us like, yes, like even though we have these, predispositions, you don't have to just give up, right? There's ways that we can self-monitor, we can goal set, and yes, we might mess up. That's okay. That's what the feedback is for. And that's why we take data, and that's why we make a plan so that we can, get back up right away and not just say, you know what, forget it. I'm not gonna care about my health anymore. I'm just gonna sit here, and do nothing about it. So that's what I really liked about this workshop that I attended. And then these articles also, I felt like they really showed a different way, right? Like if one size doesn't fit all, you don't have to just eat nothing and run all day. You can make a plan to do things that you really enjoy and eat foods that you like without feeling guilty about it.
Yeah. Great. So just kind of diving into, I know we've already hit on some of this, right? But overall, the purpose of this episode is to explain how ABA principles can be applied to improve fitness and overall health. And also, we wanted to mention that this is very much a beginner level discussion, right? And it's perfect for those new to this topic, those in the process of, finding what works best for them, and really using some of these articles that we're mentioning, of just getting more data and more backing to different methods that could be really helpful. So we hope that that is what some of our listeners take away from today's topic. And diving into kind of just the first heading that we have, the basics of behavior analysis and fitness. And so, yeah, I don't know, Mary, if you want to take over kind of just understanding the behavior change and, things that you learned from some of the basics that you mentioned from some of the research you've done.
Right. Yeah. And so again, just relating, right? Just ABA concepts in general, right? To people, just people in general. So, what is the behavior? Find your target behavior. What's going to help you achieve those long-term goals, right? You could you could do a brain exercise or you can write it down. But like one behavior would be to move more, right? Walk more, dance more,
Yeah.
um, attend a class, right? Just that simple goal of going to the class, right? So we do want to figure out what behaviors do we need to do to achieve our goals. But sometimes that's really hard to think about, right? Like what do I need to do differently that will help me achieve my goals? The other part is reinforcement, and that was a big part of the workshop was yes, you can have a great plan, you could implement it, but if you are not receiving reinforcement for what you're doing, it's not going to be sustainable over time. And so finding reinforcement, right? What reinforces you?
Yeah.
That's hard. Do a preference assessment. You really got to figure that piece out. Um, the other part he talked about too was punishment. How are these activities punishing to us? Why don't we do them more? Maybe they're not fun for us. And for some reason we think, oh, running is the only way to be healthy, right? Some people are stuck in that mindset, like I can only run to be healthy, but they hate running. Well, that's something good to know about yourself, right?
Yeah.
Running is punishing, so maybe you shouldn't run anymore. We should find other avenues. Something I learned about myself that was punishing was I really didn't like the social piece of the gym. Like if I went to the gym, I really didn't like people talking to me. And so that's something I learned, like, going to a gym maybe at 5 p.m. was very punishing. Like it was so like I would sweat thinking about it. I would be so scared. I was like, you know what? Maybe going to the gym at 5 p.m. is just not the right time for me then. And then the other piece, right? Extinction. So how do we put those maladaptive behaviors on extinction? And there's many different ways to kind of think about that. But again, you kind of have to do that brain exercise of what is that for you and what works for you. A big one, just as an example for me with extinction, was I would say I was addicted to soda. Like I would buy a 12 pack of soda and drink the whole thing in one day, right? Which is not healthy for you. Like, obviously everything in moderation and balance. Maybe one soda is fine, but 12 sodas in a day definitely was unhealthy. So
Mhm.
as an extinction procedure, I completely stopped buying it. It's not in my house anymore. And even though I'm craving it and oh, I want it so bad, I I really have to go get it. And that is just too much of a response effort.
Yeah.
It was that behavior of drinking soda was placed on extinction. Have not drank it in a while.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Well, that's
this,
also like
yeah.
that environmental management, right? Is like if it's
Yeah.
not easily accessible to you, that's actually a vice of mine too, is like I do love like vanilla Coke, but I know that there are only a select few like restaurants that sell it. And sometimes that response effort is to go to like Popeyes. Let me not throw
Right.
out my insights, but like, yeah, I go that way to like, no, okay, hey, when I order Popeyes or I want to eat out at, and get a vanilla Coke, I know particular restaurants that have it. But you're right. It's like when I go to the grocery store, I'm very intentional that that's just not going to be something that's going to land in my cart. Do I want it? Absolutely. But I know just
Absolutely.
like you, if I have a 12 pack in there, the temptation to just like have it so accessible is going to be kind of in my face. And I always tell people I have self-discipline to not purchase it, but the self-control, if it's in my fridge, is a little questionable, you know?
That's a great way to distinguish that. You're right. And even to get to that self-discipline to not purchase it was hard, right? And sometimes that's where people are. Okay, maybe we don't go to those restaurants that sell it, or we have a buddy with us, who's going to steer us in a different direction from that aisle. But that's really where that individuality comes
Yeah.
of your plan comes into play. Was where are you in this process? Like, do you have that self-control to not drink it? Can it be in your house and you say no? Or do you really have to completely get it out of there and you just can't look at it until you're ready, right? Until we're ready to be around these things.
Yes.
It's funny to talk about soda in that way.
And when you even mentioned about the goal setting, so one thing that came to mind too is just like we would for our children, we very much individualize it, right? When we're creating goals, we are really evaluating several different factors, not only our observations or our assessments, but the families or whomever. So it's also like understanding pieces where I need to make, for me, I need to make fitness fun. So I've found that like HIIT workouts, high intensity interval training
Yeah.
is really good for me. Like I'll that's something where and like also group classes. So when I'm making some of my own fitness goals, I know like, okay, is it realistic for me that I can make it to two different group classes on back-to-back days, right? Because that means I might have to wake up super early, and I know that's a little bit punishing for me. So, just thinking about how to individualize some of those goals. And I think I'll also like being proactive and planning. Like for me, fitness has to be groups. I need to go to a group class that already has a set time. So I know that's something I could pre-plan on like Sunday for my week following up. But then again, like you mentioned, it's really individualizing to where you're at and what's fun for you and reinforcing, right?
Right. And so when I first started, I did that same, assessment of yourself. What do you enjoy? Exactly what you said, right? And I feel like I'm similar to you. What really, when I was the most active in my life was when I would join teams, or if I joined a group fitness class, or I guess, yeah, teams or group fitness classes. And so that's what I'm a part of right now. It's a group training. And we just lift weights, and the instructors teach us how to properly lift weights. um but what's nice about this is kind of what I was saying before, how I get very nervous people watching me or hovering over, so that takes away that piece of it, that anxiety for me of the gym, right? I don't have people staring at me and waiting for the piece. or I'm sorry, waiting for the machine.
Yeah.
Instead, like I have coaches encouraging me. If they are staring at me, it's not because they're waiting for the machine, it's because they're excited for me that maybe I'm lifting heavier or maybe I'm doing something more. Um, but yeah, for me, like that was the biggest piece, figure out what I enjoyed. And then the other part of it was I realized I really missed dancing, like just in general, like going out on a Friday night and just dancing is something I truly missed coming out of the pandemic. And so now I'm looking for those types of classes. Just anything I think would be fun. Gymnastics, folklorical class, salsa, just trying to get out there to move my body. And honestly, it's so much fun that I don't even miss the class. Like you said, I plan it for the week, but it's a priority for me to be there because I love it so much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so tell us too, I know you mentioned prior of like what keeps you going. And I know you share on your socials, just like I see you waking up early or you're walking your dog super early. Like I know you mentioned before, just kind of watching your parents age has been something that's motivated you. What helps you to keep going to like in the nitty-gritty times of it where you're like waking up in the morning super early to make sure you get that workout in? What kind of keeps you going in that aspect on a day-to-day?
I know that honestly, sometimes I wonder too, like what keeps me going? But in the beginning, and it changes every week, it changes. But in the beginning, when I first started really working out, my main motivation was I was getting married or I was having a wedding. Very vain, I know, but I was just like, I want to fit into my dress or I want to look a certain way. And so that was my main motivation. And yes, it's very extrinsic. But over time, it turned into a more intrinsic motivation. I truly enjoy going. I physically feel better. When I don't go, I feel awful. I feel grumpy. Um, my sessions with my kids, I feel like aren't as exciting because I didn't get my routine is off, right? It's so a part of my routine that when I don't go, my routine is thrown off. So really what keeps me going? I would say a big part of it is also the fact that I have made it so public in my social media. Like I've made this public commitment to the gym and to work out. I've made friends at the gym. So when I don't go, they start asking me, "Where are you? How come you haven't gone?" Or I guess I feel a little like I've disappointed some people, which I guess is also extrinsic. But that really does help me on those challenging days. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna set my alarm. I have 3 alarms set. I have my coffee like ready to go. So as soon as my alarms go off, I get up, I drink my coffee, I head to the bathroom. And usually by then I'm like, you know what? I'm already awake. I might as well go.
Yeah.
But I think another part of it too, for like what keeps you going is to also be aware of like we can burn out, right? So planning your rest days, like you said, maybe 2 days in a row is going to be too much for you. And by the third day, you're going to be burnt out and you're just not going to do this anymore. So having that self-awareness too of really what works for you. Okay, maybe every day doesn't work. So let's go every other day.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, I would go every other day. And then, you get used to it and you feel like you need more. So then you add another day. And then over time, you meet that goal, then you add another day.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and then I'm trying to think what keeps me going. Actually, I do have a cute little story that kept me going. I went to Target the other day and I bought a 35 pack of water. Right. So it's in my cart. And when I got to the cash register, she was like, "Oh no, 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 let me get someone. Like I'll get someone." Or she's trying to hand me the scanner, but right away I was just like, "Oh no, I got it," and I picked it up and kind of just threw it on the thing. And she was very impressed, and I didn't think about it like, "Oh, this is what I do every day." But then I stopped and thought about it, like, no, she's right. Like this is very exciting for me. I love that I can pick this up and bring it to her, and that I didn't need someone else to come help me do it. Yeah, so little things like that kind of keep me going too.
Well, I will tell you too, just from someone who is mid 30s, like lifting things Sometimes you have, and there's a whole bunch of like memes I'm sure people can make fun of, but it's real, until you really hit it where you're like, oh, I slept wrong and my neck is
Yeah.
kinked, right? Or like twisted in the wrong way and my back is messed up, especially working, we were just joking off camera, right? Like
Yeah.
working with kids too, we're moving a lot. We're naturalistic teaching, right? So there's a lot
Yeah.
of moving and play involved. So when our bodies are also not in a space where we can move and kind of keep up with the children that we work with, it does affect our day-to-day activities, our ability to be chipper and to kind of quote unquote be on, right? For our
Yeah.
kids to kind of get the maximum out of whatever 2-hour, 3-hour sessions that we might be holding. So like you mentioned, even with feeling strong, I think a lot of people associate fitness with a certain weight or you can lift a certain weight, right? But really, I think a lot of it too is like, how do you feel? Right? Like, how does this make your
Yeah.
body feel? And I know when I go to like hot yoga has also been one that's been super motivating for me. And I really love it and enjoy it with weights, right? So like, I love the heat that is entailed with the group, right? So you have multiple components there, but I know afterwards, like I feel strong. Not only do I feel a little more flexible and stretched out, that helps me get into my sessions where I am just naturally moving a lot, trying to keep up with some of my 4-year-olds,
Yeah, no, exactly. And like I would say that was one of my bigger another motivation in the beginning to get me started was coming back to work directly with the kids out of the pandemic. It was so hard to keep up with them. Like just sitting on the floor and standing up. Like I was making noises. I had never made noises before, like
Mhm.
or even just dancing with them. Like they would want to dance and I would try to dance with them and I'm like, I'm tired, keep dancing without me, but that's not the clinician I want to be. Like I want to play with them. I want to dance with them. It makes our sessions so much more enjoyable.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes. No, absolutely. And so that kind of goes into our first code word for today's episode is going to be monitor. And I think that goes into multiple things we've already talked about. Monitoring what fits for you, right? What is your reinforcer? What are your preferences? And also monitoring your own progress to your own scale, not comparing mine to yours or mine to someone else's, but rather just, how do I feel? How is this working for my schedule, for my day today? Because like we mentioned before, the consistency is also a huge piece. Great. So just transitioning, I wanted to, yeah, we talked already touched a little bit on kind of goals. And so you have something outlined
Something.
here, Mary, on just like process goals versus outcome goals. You want to touch on that a little?
Yeah, and that's so outcome goals, right, would be our like permanent product or what is the result of all this work we've put in, like right, long-term goals. What are we looking for? And then our process goals would be those more short-term goals, right? What are the baby steps that are going to get us to those outcomes? And they don't necessarily have to connect with like your weight, right? Or those again, those outcome goals. And the process goals should really focus on how we're going to get there. So I did kind of touch on that. So your smaller goals of like, I'm going to walk 10,000 steps a day. Um, if that's appropriate for your current activity level. Another process goal might be I'm going to park in the back of the parking lot 3 days out of the 5 days, right? So just again, you're not really counting the calories, you're not counting anything. It's just a way to get you to walk more.
Mhm.
One that I do for myself or I have done occasionally is like this whole month, I'm gonna walk a mile a day for 5 out of 7 days. And it's just a quick goal for that month. I give myself a slight reinforcer, I figure it out at the beginning of the month. And if I've met it by the end, I give myself a whatever that reinforcer is. Um, it can also be with food too, right? So like one thing I've done for myself is every meal has to have a veggie, regardless of the meal. So if I decided that day I'm going to McDonald's, well then I'm getting a salad also, or I'm making myself a salad. um, which was really hard at the beginning, but I thought that that was one thing that I could do for myself that wasn't taking away from myself.
Yes.
Another one I've done in the past is like every time I'm gonna drink a drink, it doesn't matter what the drink is. It could be a coffee, a soda, a juice. Before that, I'm gonna drink a water. And again, not taking away from myself, but also just I'm adding, right? And so by doing that, I'm slowly making progress towards my goals.
Yeah.
I hope I explained that well.
Oh, yeah, that was great. And
Okay.
even to the process goal piece too, it's funny because as I was reviewing prior, I was thinking of some examples. And so this last week, I was supporting one of my kiddos at a camp. And on one particular day, the camp ended. So it started at the regular location, but it ended at the pool, which was about a mile out. So I
Mhm.
remember, oh man, like, I had a kiddo after, so I had to get back pretty quickly. And I was like, man, what am I gonna do? And so I was like, well, I'm just gonna park at the pool because that's where my session ended. But it starts over there on the other. So I walked 2 miles just by parking at the park location because I had to walk to get to my session at the park, but then I had to walk with the kiddo and the rest of his campers to the park location. So I don't know, I was like that was something small that I did that improved my fitness for the day. So just those little things too, I think just being able to be not only proud of yourself, but also feel like, oh, I was a little winded, it got a little hot at the end of the day, but I was like, I'm so much happier I did that in the morning too, because I didn't have to deal with much of the heat trying to race back to my car at the end of a session. So I thought that was something too, like when you talk about process goals, um, how I was able to at least implement it for that day, and sometimes those things come up randomly, but being conscious and a little bit intentional can really make a difference in one day's activity.
Ah, exactly. That sounds like a great way to do that, though. You to plan ahead and then also to think about that too. Like you knew that you had a short amount of time, right? So why even put yourself through that stress? Just have your car ready so at the end you can go and then feel great about yourself, about what
Yes.
you did and yourself throughout the day. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, Another thing that the workshop really talked about too was figuring out your triggers, and I think that was something similar what you're talking about of, like, having to rush to your car and then to leave, like, triggers are barriers, right? Like, what's stopping you from moving? Um, and so like you said, finding little things throughout the day that will help you move your body is definitely more effective than going to the gym for 3 hours, right? No one really has that much time if you're working a full-time job, right? Or if you have a family, 3
Mhm.
hours just to go to the gym. But if you could do 10 minutes here or there throughout the day, that adds up to, about 2, 3 hours, then that's even better.
Yeah. And even stress, right? Like stress can also lead to that where I almost feel so overwhelmed. I know for me, working out at the end of the day is really hard because I'm just fatigued. And, if there's a piece in there that kind of made it less of a good day, I know that stress might get to me a little bit and discourage me from wanting to go or attend the gym or a group class.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. When I first started all this, I would go after work. I wasn't ready to go in the morning. Like that was an outcome goal for me was switching to morning routines.
Mhm.
Um, but I really wasn't ready yet. Like I knew if I did that, I wouldn't go, and I knew they were going to charge me if I didn't show up. So I just wouldn't sign up, right? I'm like, nope, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. But then, just naturally within my work, I had a client go on vacation in the morning. It was for, like, 3 days, and I said, "You know what? This is the time. I'm gonna make the switch. I'm gonna go to bed early." And just those 3 days, like, there's days I mess up and I don't go, right? And that's okay. You just try again tomorrow. Um, but now, like, having gone to this gym for a year now, I switched to the morning, and honestly, it's just intrinsically, I feel so much better. I love having done something hard for myself at the beginning of the day, um, and then, just like what you said, then ended up going to my session and being just more happy, more excited,
Mhm.
just all the troubles of my yesterday have gone away because I, threw the medicine ball at the wall enough that it's gone.
Yes, yes. Hey, sometimes those outlets, right? Like we even
Yeah.
energetically, right? Like not only is our body just physically moving and getting that out, but like energetically, it's kind of a nice release, but also just to know that we're prioritizing our own self-care. We talk about burnout a lot in this field, right? And whatever that is for anybody, whether it be fitness or whether it be just doing things that you enjoy more, I think that's really the key component is that, taking care of yourself in whatever capacity, mentally, emotionally, physically, really matters within our field, especially as direct care clinicians.
Yeah, definitely. And I think so burnout, exactly. And that's what I really try to avoid within this field is burnout. I feel like I really like what I do. And so to not have to do it anymore, it makes me kind of sad. But coming out of the pandemic, I really was just physically feeling like unwell. And then when I tried working with the kids, it wasn't happening. And so I started feeling really sad that I might potentially not be doing this anymore. Um, but right, then I started getting into fitness and feeling better about myself and really starting to notice what are my triggers for burning out? Like what makes me need a break? And then scheduling my breaks too, like planning ahead. Like I know there's a holiday coming up, so maybe I might take that Friday off, or maybe I might on that holiday just go on vacation, right? Like knowing I need something different. Same with the gym. So like if I've gone 4 days in a row, forcing myself to take the fifth day off and then going on the next day. Um, or even planning like spa days, a sauna day, just go hang out in the pool for a little bit. So you're still moving your body, but it's not the same thing, right? So it's just something different so you don't burn out from it.
Yes. I think in the Normand study, at the end, they had sent out a feedback of or a survey basically on like, how the participants felt, was the intervention effective? And I think there was a piece about planning rest, right? Was that
Yeah.
essential? There was a lot that went
Yeah.
into it. I think in the surveys, they also resulted that the multiple components kind of really did help. It wasn't just like, oh, just the feedback or just the self-monitoring, but kind of this combination really was helpful for the four participants that were in, or I should say three. There was one that was a little bit on the cusp, but yeah, I thought that was really cool is like they planned the rest breaks, and one of them had pointed out that was helpful, is to just be able to plan that in, just like we would plan to do something. We also have to plan to know that our body does need rest, our minds, right? Because sometimes the stress of I need to do this, I need to do this. I'm a to-do person, so I have a to-do list 24/7, and I know that that can be stressful sometimes. I have to take a break from that and just like let go of, all the to-dos and allow my brain to relax a little.
Right. Yeah. And similar to like the kids we work with, right? If we know our schedule or if we have a routine and we know what's coming next, sometimes it's easier to get through that one more workout. Like I have one more workout and then I get a break, And if you don't know that, you might end up taking 5 days off
Yeah.
without wanting to, and then feeling bad about yourself, like, oh man, I didn't work out.
Um,
Oh no, and then it spirals. At least
mhm.
for me, I am similar to you. I usually have a to-do list, and if I don't check it all off, I start to spiral, of not being productive enough.
Yes.
So I guess I'm learning that in my 30s, like being productive is not, like your value. You're still a valuable person. You just need breaks and rests like everyone else.
Yes, definitely. The kind of transitioning too is that we touched on a little bit of the food, but how do you like, do you have any particular regimen? I know there's like people who count macros or, like certain amounts of protein or carbs or, do you have anything special within your diet that you found has been really helpful to implement? I know you already shared some of, also anytime you do eat fast food, right? You try to add a veggie or things like that, or So yeah, anything in terms of like meal prep or anything like that that you
Yeah. And I think naturally, just with things becoming so expensive, meal prep became more easier because, eating out was very expensive. But not just that, it wasn't just expensive, like the portions you get are pretty big. And in the beginning, when you start all this, you really want to evaluate your current like eating habits, right? Like take a food journal, food diary, write down what you're doing, how many calories you're taking
baseline.
in. Yeah, and I did that and realized I was consuming a lot of calories, and
Mhm.
it was because of that. I was eating out big portions. Um, so one of the things, talking with a lot of other fitness people, it seemed like protein was the most important macro of them all. And I really, in the beginning, tried to focus on all of them, all the macros. Had an app that would help me. It became so overwhelming that I just stopped doing it. Um, so then when I finally came back to it, I said, I'm going to focus on one. I'm just going to focus on protein. Protein, oh, I guess two, protein and veggies. And as long as I'm meeting that macro goal, then I'm fine. Like I can have some bread, I can eat potatoes, um, and really not trying to deny myself because that's always how I end up spiraling, right? Like I end up depriving myself of foods, then I go and binge on them. So instead of doing that, I really focused on just protein. If I'm hungry, eat a protein, whatever that might be. For me, I do meal prep. So I meal prep for 2 days. And what's great is my husband helps too. So he might meal prep for 2 days. And then once his is done, I'll meal prep for the next 2 days. And we just kind of rotate through that. Um, and then we do eat. We do eat out once a week. We have like a date night. We'll pick a restaurant and we go. And I think because we're eating well, like we're not starving by the time we get to the restaurant. So we're not overindulging. We might just have one really good meal that we're like, oh, like for me, I love Chinese food, right? So if we go to Chinese food, I'm getting the chow mein, I'm getting egg rolls, but maybe the chow mein is a small, right? It's a smaller portion. Because I haven't deprived myself of it over this time, I'm not hungry for the noodles,
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so for meal prepping, yes. So yes, definitely meal prep. I cut up vegetables. Like cucumbers are my favorite. Cucumbers, carrots, and celery, and they're all cut up. They're in my fridge. If I feel hungry, I can just pull it out. I also always do like hard-boiled eggs. So I'll make 12 hard-boiled eggs for the week. They're just sitting in my fridge. If I'm hungry, I'll grab that first. And
Even
then of
just
course I do like
choices,
protein
right?
shake. Oh,
Choices
sorry,
in
what?
choices in those snacks, and the
Yeah,
preparation, just
yeah.
have it in your fridge. I think, yeah, the boiled egg is a really good one to just like kind of grab and go. Like you mentioned, the protein shakes too, just having some of those things accessible is really about um not depriving, but rather replacing with a better alternative. Those
There you
small
go. That's a
really.
great way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like finding replacement behaviors, right? Or replacements for those maladaptive behaviors or the not so nutritious foods that we tend to grab.
Yes. And I think that it's valuable too. The feedback portion of what they mentioned in the Norman study was, for me, what popped up is also the accountability. So I think they just had a small short phrase where they basically just reported their steps for the day. That's really the physical activity they implemented using a pedometer, was that each participant just email their steps, and they just emailed back, oh, great job, if they met their goal, or hey, keep at it, it's fine. Like a very short kind of praise or motivational thing with a graph of their previous progress. So they also kind of got some of that visual support as well, of some of that praise or encouragement that might be needed. And I think a lot of that is also accountability. Like you said with your husband, I helped take care of my mother, and it's made me very good with meal prep because she can't prepare like a hot meal for herself, but she can warm something up. So even in my meal prep on some weeks when I'm like, oh, a little bit lazy, or I don't really want to prep, I know I kind of have that, my mom, like, depending on me, or else I have to whip up something at 6:30 after work, right? That's very hard.
Yeah.
So I know that, pre-planning some of the things on Sunday and just making sure she has her lunches or her dinners as well. And then, by nature, I also have what I need. It's like, oh, I want to stop off, somewhere, maybe grab my vanilla Coke at Popeyes, right? But I'm like, no, I have this at home, or sometimes even getting ice for my cold, like, water. I don't have ice like all the time, so I have to like go out. My fridge doesn't make it, so I have to go out and buy ice. So kind of that makes me excited, where I'm like, oh, I have ice. That's okay. My water will taste better, So
Yeah.
like I'm like, I have ice in a meal. Like, I don't need to stop off anywhere. And the cost of things have also kind of kept me from even wanting to eat out. Where it's like, no, we have food at home. Like, I did a good grocery run this week.
But there's a phrase that my husband and I say in Spanish. It's "hay comida en la casa." There's food at home.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yes. But then the cost too, right? We're saving money. So that makes me a little bit more, I guess, I feel better about buying the little bit more expensive
Mhm,
products, since I'm not spending it at, the restaurants every day. I might buy the organic, or I might buy the more expensive grass-fed ground beef. And I don't feel as guilty since, kind of evens out in other
mhm,
ways.
mhm, mhm. Definitely. And so we have here just applying or practical application of ABA in fitness, which you spoke a little bit about. One thing I was curious if you could share is like that functional movement assessment. If you could tell us a little bit more about kind of what that is, or what that entails.
Yeah, yeah. So what Dr. Cameron talked about was that before you start any like fitness or health regimen, you really want to take baseline data.
Mhm,
And one way to do that is through a functional movement assessment, and another word for it is just functional movement screening. He personally said, just go to the local college. The kids have to do it for their homework. So just go down there and see who's willing to do it for you for free. Um, Personally, to me, that's not like that would be punishing to me to just go down there and be like, hey, can someone do this? I looked it up. Maybe I should have shared that article with you too, but there is this article by Cook, Burton, and Boom there where they really talk about the functional assessment and what the data sheet might look like. And so what it is they're just seeing your flexibility, how like, so the first one is a deep squat, right? Like, how deep can you do your squat? The second one is a lunge. How deep can you do your lunges? And there's just different exercises, and they're just measuring like how far can you stretch. Another one is like being able to touch your fingers behind your back.
mhm.
I don't know, Marissa, if you ever did the presidential like fitness test when we were kids,
Junior high.
um, or in
Yes.
junior high. That's similar to what this is. Basically, that they measure it, and then you go and do your, you go work out, or you go do more things, and then test yourself again to see how much better your fitness is.
Mhm. Do they guide you on, like, because you're, let's just say if you're not as flexible, do they guide you that, oh, hey, this type of class or this type of exercise would be more helpful? Or is it more towards like just you and kind of just self-monitoring for yourself?
For this, it would be more of self-monitoring for yourself, like creating a baseline. This is where you're at. And then after, some months have passed, then you come and do your baseline again. And, hopefully you've improved. And that's like your outcome goal, was that you want to be able to be more flexible or stronger, or whatever that is. So this should help you find your outcome goals.
Okay.
Um, However, like, I looked at this, and I looked at a different assessment. Actually, I did it with one of our colleagues, Quinn. She has a assessment book, but it's much longer, and we spent probably an hour doing this together. But it's similar. You're measuring how flexible you are, how much can you lift, how fast can you run.
Mhm.
Um, but even that I feel like was overwhelming to me. Like, you know, even though I'm a clinician, and yes, we do this in our job personally, like this is just a lot to
Yeah.
do. I ended up creating my own, like what was important to me about
Mhm.
physical health. And I picked 5 exercises or 5 things that I personally wanted to see improvement on. And those were like doing push-ups, being able to run a mile. They're called dead hangs. You just hang off a monkey bar. Another one I did was plank. And then the other one I did was squats. So those 5 are like my personal physical assessments that I wanna see improve over
Yeah.
time.
Mhm.
Um,
I
but
think
you
it's
could definitely, like, yeah, do a more formal assessment.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you also kind of modified it for yourself, but even just hearing about some of those things they're evaluating, right? And then, like you said, making it towards something that meant a little bit more for you. I know, like for in yoga, I took a long break. I used to go 3 times a week a year ago, and I just kind of just started getting back into it. It's also very expensive for a yoga studio. But I do love
Right.
it and I do go. And I was thinking when you said, like, how deep in a squat you can go. So, from playing, sports in college, I my knees are not the strongest. So, I do feel like when we're doing one leg lunges, like, it's just a little it just doesn't feel comfortable. There's no pain, but I know for me, like we talked about at an older age, as you get older, you also start to be a little more body aware, right? So, I'm just like, "Okay, I know where it feels good, and I feel like I'm still exercising those muscles, but I'm gonna modify whatever group, especially being in a group, right? It's like you kind of feel pressured. But for me, it's like I'm not gonna hurt myself coming to a group class, right? Or I'm gonna
Yeah.
do everything I can to avoid that. So, I'm not gonna do things just to keep up with the class. I'm gonna do things so that I feel well enough to do. So, like, we'll do sumo squats sometimes it's a hit workout, so it's kinda moving quickly and you're kinda moving with the beat, but I'm like, "I am not going into a chair seat, like, I can't." Like, at the end of the and maybe I can when I feel more confident in, building back some of those muscles around my knee and my leg to feel stronger, or even in the flow that we do, right? Being able to do a push-up, without putting my knees on the floor, like, that's something I'm like, "I'll be able to get there in a month or 2," because that's where I was before, but I need to also give myself a little bit of grace to know where I am in my workouts. And so that just kind of came to me as you were talking about just some of the things that they evaluate during these. And overall, I think it's helpful for improvement, right? Is to really monitor where you are or where you start as to like where you want to go or where you want to see yourself, whether that be within flexibility or, just overall strength.
Right, right. Like what we say in ABA, right? How do you know you did better? How do you know the behavior's improved if you don't know where you started, right?
Mhm.
And then I think you said a perfect statement. It was having grace with yourself, like knowing where you are and truly knowing, okay, this is where I'm at. I would love to be here, but that's okay. I'm here and I'm just going to take it one step at a time. And I'm just going to slowly get to where I want to be.
Mhm.
And just having, grace with yourself and patience with yourself and knowing you will get there eventually.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, and then you mentioned something too about having like knees. That also might be a more like why you would want to go get a professional assessment done then. Like if you have ailments, right? Like obviously I'm not a doctor and I'm not gonna and if I'm telling you to do lunges and you're like, well, I can't, my knee, and I'm like, do lunges. So that might be why it's better to go see a professional, right? So if you're saying, well, my knees hurt, they might have a modification for you or a better assessment for you.
Mhm. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Mhm.
And you talking about too, like SMART goals. This is something we implement, whenever we're creating goals as well. But yeah, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound, right? And so yeah, another thing, I don't know if you mentioned that one or not, but like visual supports. I know for me, um, having a little chart. I do a lot of budgeting, like fun budgeting, like challenges. So I have like even debt payoff, like little charts. I am very much a visual person. So being able to say, hey, if I have a goal of going to work out, whether that be going on a 30-minute walk with my dog or going to a group class. If I have a goal of 3 times per month or three times per week, I'm gonna like have a little visual to color in that, okay, that was done this week. So even just visual supports to like keep you on track and just like little tools. Do you have any tools or tips like that that you feel like have been really helpful for you along your journey?
I love that you have the little coloring chart. That's cute. I feel like I'm similar. I use similar things I use with the kids we work with. Like I like token boards. I like sticker charts. I've turned my calendar into like a token board type of thing. Um, I have my own bathroom, so it's like private. Like I really don't like sharing it with other people. I don't know why I'm like that, but so it's private. It's for me. It's me only, and I write my goals on there, and I have different stickers for different goals. And towards the end of the month, like it feels so great seeing that the stickers, my calendar is full, you
Yes,
know.
yes.
um, or even like yeah, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. I do try to make my own goals like we would with our kiddos. And I know it seems silly, but it helps me really narrow down my focus too, right? And really see like, okay, I'm almost there. I've got the 10,000 steps. Now I'm going to increase it by 500 more, you know? And I will type it out and I'll make it look pretty and I'll print it, and I'll hang it somewhere. I might share it with friends who also like journaling or doing things like that. This year I planned like a, what is it called? A vision board party with some friends, and I just shared like things like this with them, and it was really exciting. You know, they gave me a lot of support for it.
Yeah. How valuable
Um,
do you find that community is? I know it's kind of been touched on throughout this talk today, but yeah, I mean, for you, how strongly do you feel that community has helped support that too?
it's definitely been the biggest factor. I don't think if I shared with anybody what I was doing, I don't know if I would have continued. Um, as much as I love to be social, there are some parts about being social I don't like. So kind of like what I said, going to the gym when it was crowded was very punishing. I didn't really like people hovering near me or even like talking to me. I don't know why. Um, but having this community of the gym that I go to, it's an all-women fitness studio, and the coaches are similar in my age. They're similar in my challenges, but I see them almost every day, and they create opportunities outside of the gym to get together, and we just all really encourage each other, and that's been very, very helpful. On top of that, my husband has also been very, very supportive. So, like in the beginning, he would eat the same things I'm eating. He would try to work out. Also like on his own time. And then, you know, he'd always ask me questions about like, how was the gym? What workouts did you do today? Like, how did you eat today? But never would make me feel bad. He was just always encouraging. And that would make me excited. And then I would come, you know, to work, and like some of our coworkers knew like about my progress. So then they would ask me and I'd get really excited to share.
Yes.
And I think a big part of it too was also just being on social media and creating reels. I always thought that was really fun, and just
Oh,
wanted to encourage others.
can you share one of the challenges you did? I think it was like a like 30 and
Like a
30
push-up. Was it push-ups?
one. It was like, I don't know, I can't remember if you woke up early, if it was like 30, it was the 30-day challenge.
Oh, I did do a challenge. Yes. So I did a challenge. It was related around food, and so around tracking your food, and just being more mindful about how you're eating. On top of that, the challenge was to also work out 3 times a week, like strength training, and then doing cardio 3 times a week.
Oh,
And so
wow.
that's 6 workouts plus your food. And so the biggest part of that challenge, what really helped me was we had a group text. So similar to what, um, I can't think of his name right
Morley.
now, the article Normand was talking
Yeah.
about,
Mhm.
that feedback. All we had to do was text them, this is what we ate today. It could be a photo, it could be we could actually write it out. This was my walk today. Um, think that's what it was, eating and walking. And then they would just text back, "Oh, great job. Oh, I love that food." And just that encouragement, that little feedback back was very reinforcing.
Yeah.
You start wanting to take better pictures of your food. You start wanting to try the food that they made.
Mhm.
And then it becomes a conversation starter too, right? In the gym, like, "Hey, I saw the food you made. Like, let's talk about it. What else did you make
Yeah.
today?" Um, and then I see the girls at the grocery store too, and so it's fun to, like, we run into each other, and then we're kinda, like, talking about what we're buying or the different vegetables or the different proteins we're getting. So it's just been very fun coming out of the pandemic. The pandemic was very lonely,
Mhm.
and, coming out of it to just have these group of people who are very similar to me and like-minded and just wanna be healthier.
Yes. No, absolutely. And one thing too is like even the Norman study, they use a pedometer, but I was thinking too, like even Apple Watch, Fitbits, even on our phone, like they just come with apps already that have these implemented in them. So there is, access to, that was another thing, is like low cost methods to increase physical activity, because cost is a factor, right? We just talked about, some of our studios that we go to, or even a gym membership. Um, and so, being able to incorporate fitness can also be a very simple thing. Like we've been talking about walks, right? Even just something as simple as a 15-30 minute walk can improve um, your overall health, right? And like, especially if you're consistent with it. So something that could be low effort, low cost.
You're right, you're right. I agree, like, our smartwatches are definitely not cheap. Our phones are definitely not cheap, but those 2 tools have really helped me, I think keep track of everything and really help my data collection. But there are other low cost ways, right? There's notebooks. You can get a notebook and you can find the size that works for you. Like if you go to the dollar store, there's small notebooks, there's big notebooks. Um, Same thing, like dollar store, get pretty pens. Like if you're a journaler, that might be a way to motivate you to continue logging your progress.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think another way. But if you do have a phone too, like taking pictures, like it doesn't have to be an iPhone, right? You could have the cheapest phone available. It takes pictures. That's another way to log like what you ate
Mhm.
without having to like sit down and write it immediately. Because that's always the advice when you are logging food is to do it right away so that you don't forget. But
Mhm.
I mean, are we really gonna sit there and like, okay, what am I eating for breakfast today? That takes time, especially if you don't know like what you put in there, you have to really think about it.
Yeah.
So for me, taking pictures has been a great way to track things, and then maybe later I go back and write it down.
Mhm.
Um, on my watch, I've created like shortcuts, so all I have to do is quickly kind of scroll through, press it, it records my how much water I've had or my workouts. Um, but I haven't paid for any apps, right? So there's apps that you can pay for, but there's also free apps out there. So I think if you just have to do a little research, if cost is a factor, do a little research, find out what works for you,
Mhm.
and then play around with it. I normally like journaling, so I really thought like a journal fitness book would work for me, but I never kept it up, like ever, ever, ever. And then I would lose it. Um, so what has been most effective for me has been my smart technology, so my watch or my phone, um, and just using the notebook app on my phone too. So like I set it up on my phone like a data sheet. It's just a table, and I set it up in advance so that when I do go to the gym, I just have to quickly open it, type in the weight that I used, or if I am running, like my mile time. Very quickly, it's easy, low response effort.
Yes. And I just love the idea too, like you've been saying throughout this whole episode, is just customizing it to what works for you. That's, I think, a really key factor too.
Right, and I think I always tried to just do what other people were doing, right? I would find someone who I wanted to look like, or wanted to be like and try to copy them, and it never worked out for me. Or maybe I might pick one thing from them that worked and then it just never worked. So this time around, I really try to do some self-reflection, like what works for me, and just do what works for you. And other people always want to give you advice or want to tell you how to do things. And the best thing is always just say, I hear you, that sounds great, and that sounds great for you.
Yeah.
You could try it, but always stick with what works for you.
Absolutely. And then to our final code word for today, it's health. Just kind of wrapping up a little bit about what we've discussed. We had such a great conversation today, Mary. But kind of recapping some of the takeaways or that you want to leave our listeners slash viewers with, not just only in your personal journey, but just overall, and even guidance towards their themselves starting their own journey.
Um, I would say the main thing is like what we've said, have grace with yourself, right? Know that this is new if you've not done anything like this before. Um, and I think the other part of it too is remembering we're not training to go to the Olympics, right? We're not training to be athletes. We have work tomorrow, right? We just want to be healthy.
I love that. Yes, yes.
So kind of like what you said too, like you're comparing yourself, right? Try it's so hard not to, but you really have to compare yourself with how you were yesterday. Like take your pictures, take your progress pictures, um, journal if that's your thing, record videos, but really take your data. And if you physical, like handwritten data is not working, like I said, pictures or another form of data collection, um, just really celebrate yourself, like fall in love with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really is crazy though. We talk about everyday, we have that as our little slogan, right? Everyday behaviors for everyday people. But we do behavior analysis every day, within our jobs, but we don't always realize or see the technicalities when we're thinking about also like, fitness. If you're doing it X amount of times a week, you're also implementing those principles within your fitness journey. So, whether you want to term them or coin them, as our viewers, it really is, right? You have your own reinforcement and you have your own motivations, and how you create a plan, right? A behavior plan for yourself of how you're going to pursue your journey, what your journey looks like. It's going to be very much individualized for what works for you. And I hope that that was a lot of the takeaway from today too, is what I learned from listening to your journey, Mary.
Yeah, exactly. It's all individualized, right? It should be fun. Life should be fun.
Yeah.
If you don't like going to the gym, there's other things to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Great. So yeah, so thank you so much for our listeners. And, we invite you to check out future episodes and any idea that you might have for any future content. Please feel free to reach out to us. And remember that you can obtain one continued education credit for listening to today's episode. Head over to our website at joyscapetherapy.com. Enter in those code words you've heard from today and your BACB info at checkout, and then you'll receive your certificate in a few days. Mary, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. It was such an intriguing conversation and so inspiring to hear just about your fitness journey and how you just naturally and independently implemented some of these great ABA principles within your success.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. This was so much fun.
Great. Thank you.